Hello everyone, welcome to 9-Inch Charge, Dan here, and today we're going to do a Warscroll review for the Akhelian Allopexes for the Idoneth Deepkin. The Akhelian Allopexes has recently been pimped out in the new book and for the new battle tome. He's got some new abilities, he's got more damage on his harpoon, he's got new rules for coherency, they can be taken in units now, and they can also be battle line. So plenty to talk about, lots to look at. I for one am really excited to see an army of sharks on the tabletop. Just before we begin, if this video is something that you enjoy, please be sure to drop it a like. It just helps the channel grow and helps people to find us. And I've been having a little look at YouTube analytics, and it's telling me that people are coming back to watch these Warscroll reviews and the Age of Sigmar content again and again. But not everybody who comes back to watch again and again is subscribed. They're getting it through notifications and things like that. But if you are someone who's coming back to watch the content on the channel over and over, please consider clicking the subscribe button because it does really help the channel out. Okay, so we're going to review the new Warscroll from the Fury of the Deep box. Not everything has changed, but there are some very significant changes, and I'm going to go over everything as if it were brand new. So, Allopexes are vicious predators of the deep, known for their voracious appetites. As Akhelian bond beasts, they are more dangerous still, boasting scythed fins and deadly back-mounted harpoon launchers. Even the bravest fear these finned menaces. Akhelian Allopexes have a move of 14 inches, 10 wounds, a bravery of 6, and a save of 4+, and come in at 165 points for 1. Now, just off the bat, 10 wounds with a 4+ save is really fantastic. We know that we can use all out defense to make this a 3+, so they're really, really hardy. Just 1 is really tough. 14-inch move is just incredible because this unit can fly, so it can get really where it needs to be, anywhere on the tabletop. If it needs to get in combat, it can jump over screens. If it needs to get somewhere to see something to shoot, it's definitely going to be able to do that. The only downside that I can see is this bravery of 6, which isn't too much of an issue if you take 1 on their own, but if you take them in multiples, and as we'll get on to later on, they can be battle line units in the Fuathan Enclave. If you start to take multiples of them and you start failing those battle shock tests, low bravery means that you're going to lose these models, and they're very expensive to start losing them to battle shock. So again, you may consider keeping a command point spare to help them out in the battle shock phase, just in case. Each model in an Akhelian Allopexes unit is armed with one of the following weapon options: Razor Shell Harpoon Launcher and Barbed Hooks and Blades, or Rotarius Net Launcher and Barbed Hooks and Blades. All models in the unit must be armed with the same weapon option. This unit's Allopexes are each armed with a Ferocious Bite. So let's have a look at the Barbed Hooks and Blades and Ferocious Bite, and then we will get on to the difference between the Harpoon and Net Launchers. The Barbed Hooks and Blades have a range of 1 inch, they have 6 attacks each, they hit and wound on 3s, and have a damage of 1. This has a good weight of attacks and a good ease to hit and wound, especially as you can make this +1 to hit with all out attack, and then you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. The downside is, with no rend and only 1 damage, it is going to be difficult to get through targets that aren't squishy. But with the Akhelian Allopexes, the bite is worse than its bark. So the Ferocious Bite has another range of 1 inch, it has 3 attacks, it hits and wounds on 3s, has a rend of 2 and a damage of 2. Now this is much nicer. Rend 2 is great, especially in this edition with all-out defense where you can increase your save by 1. Rend 2 is still going to get through that all-out defense and take a point off their normal save for the enemy you're attacking. And 2 damage is really nice as well, so I really rate the Ferocious Bite. The Barbed Hooks and Blades do still have their place. If you're going through 1 wound battle line units, you are going to get through those quickly with the Barbed Hooks and Blades, but against the bigger opponents, the Ferocious Bite is going to help out a bit more. Okay, so with that said and done, let's have a look at the missile weapons. And the first one is the Razor Shell Harpoon Launcher, which has seen a bit of an update and a bit of an upgrade in this new Warscroll. So it has a range of 24 inches, which is massive considering you've already got a move of 14. So really the range is 38 inches, which is just, well, mind-blowing really. You can basically reach anywhere on the table. It has 4 attacks, it hits and wounds on 3s, it has a rend characteristic of 1, and its damage now has gone up from 1 to D3. I think for me, this is one of the standout parts of the Warscroll. The ability for each one to potentially do 4d3 wounds to your opponent is really big. And then if you consider that these are potentially battle line, and then you can take them in units of 3s, that's a potential 12d3 wounds, so they really do begin to stack. I think the range is great, the number of attacks is really impressive, it's easy to hit and wound, it has rend, it's got everything, to be honest. I think this Razor Harpoon Launcher is really great. I think it is better than the net launcher, but we'll have a look at the net launcher still. So the net launcher has a range of 18. It has 1 attack. It hits and wounds on 3s. It has no rend, and it has a damage of 3. So 1 attack hitting and wounding on 3s with no rend means that it's not the most likely weapon in the world to actually get through and cause damage. But that doesn't matter. We're going to skip ahead and look at abilities. And the first ability is Entangled. So a Rotarius net entangles its victim even if it does not tear them to shreds right away. So if an attack made by this unit's Rotarius net launcher scores a hit, the target unit cannot make pile-in moves that turn. So now if you take it for this ability, actually you don't need to roll to hit or to wound and to get through enemy armor saves and ward saves and all these kinds of things. You're just worrying about trying to get a 3+. And you are definitely more likely than not to roll a 3+, unless you have my dice rolling abilities. I would still say that this is quite situational. The thing about this is that even if your opponent cannot make a pile-in move that turn, it doesn't mean that they can't attack. They just can't move in closer range before they attack. And if you're already in combat, chances are you're going to pile into them. So ultimately you'll end up within range of each other anyway. So I think there are situations where this is good, but I don't actually think that this is anywhere near as good as the damage that you get from the Harpoon Launcher. So for me, I'd always take the Harpoon Launcher. I might take 1 net launcher if I had lots and lots of these. Maybe in the comments, if you could think of a really good situation where you could use these, let me know. Just one springs to mind is there are some units that do have a really long pile-in range. And if you charge, you can always make a pile-in, even if you're not in combat. And sometimes some units, especially in Ogre Moor tribes, use this ability to fling their units across the battlefield, but you could lock that down. But as I said, it's quite situational, so I don't really know if it's worth it. But let's have a look at the other abilities that there are on this Warscroll. Firstly is Champion. If this unit has 2 or more models, 1 model in this unit can be an Alpha Allopex. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by this unit's melee weapons. So that's pretty cool. So then we get to hit on 2s with all of our melee attacks without having to spend a command point. And the unit champion can issue commands to the unit. So that's pretty good. You do have to reinforce them, but I think that's definitely worth it. Next is Merciless Shiver. Allopexes attack in coordinated waves in order to overwhelm their foe. If this unit has 2 or more models, it is coherent if each model in the unit is within 3 inches horizontally of at least 1 other model in the unit instead of 1. This is pretty cool. I really like this because they're on quite long bases anyway, and I kind of have the feeling that you can kind of turn them sideways and then you can create a massive screen across the front and protect your Namati or something like that. It also just gives you a bit more freedom about where you place these models, and they are really big models and it would be difficult to get them within 1 inch of each other without just being clumsy anyway, so it makes sense. It's quite a sensible rule. Next is Bloodthirsty Predators. Allopexes are drawn towards the scent of freshly spilt blood. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's ferocious bite if it's within 6 inches of any enemy models that have wounds allocated to them, or if it's within 6 inches of any enemy units that have had models slain in that turn. I like it, it's fluffy, it's just another way you can hit on 2s for free basically without spending a command point. And this is what basically this Warscroll seems to want to do. It seems to want to allow you to hit in melee a lot easier. So with a bit of support from the Harpoon Launcher or a bit of support from your Namati Reavers, you could be able to pick off a point of damage on a unit, then go in and get +1 to hit with your Ferocious Bite, and your Champion's going to get +1 to hit with all his melee attacks as well. So then we're looking at 9 close combat attacks, all hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, and some of them have got rend, some not, but a big weight of attacks, all hitting really easily, so then they become really ferocious. So all in all, I think that they're a really cool unit. I think they've got a really good save, good move, good presence on the table, they're hardy, and a really good ranged attack and really good close combat attacks, especially if you take advantage of these abilities to get +1 to hit naturally before spending a command point. But I don't want to leave the Warscroll review just there. I want to have a quick look at what they look like as battle line and what these new special rules for them will be. So as I said previously, if you take the Furthan Enclave, this unlocks BATTLELINE Allopexes. So this straight away means that you can reinforce them twice, and you can take them in units of 3s if you want. And it unlocks a special unit called the bloodthirsty shiver, and this is essentially a unit of 3 Allopexes, but they all count as single models. So you take 3 single models, but for this bloodthirsty shiver to work, they all still have to be within 3 inches of each other, so they still have to be in coherency. But as I said, they count as individual models each, not one unit of 3. And then what you do is you nominate a single shark from the shiver. If you do so until the end of that phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that unit's ferocious bite is a 6, that attack scores 2 hits on the target instead of 1, and make a wound and save roll for each hit. If the attacking unit is within 3 inches of one or more other units from the same bloodthirsty shiver, its ferocious bite scores 3 hits on an unmodified roll of a 6 instead. With 3 attacks on the bite, you've got a 50-50 chance of being able to pull this off. And you can take multiple shivers. So if you have 2 shivers in combat at the same time, you're probably likely odds on to be able to pull this off and be able to cause some extra combat damage. Okay, so that's everything in the Warscroll, and that's everything that we know in the new book that lets you buff the Allopexes. I think they're a really cool choice. I'd really like to see an army where these are battle line. I'd like to see a couple of these shivers going around on the tabletop. 6 sharks would be great. Anybody who follows the meta for Ideneth Deepkin, you may know Ben Spinetti, who his hashtag is SharkMeta on Twitter. He's been ahead of the game with this for a bit of a while now, and I guess he must have some kind of premonition about what was going to happen with the sharks. So check out him and check out his army lists. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more like this in the future. This has been 9 Inch Charge, and I will catch you next time.